Cliff here, and welcome to Otaku Evolution. In this video, we'll take a look at the fourth theatrical Lupin III anime movie, Farewell to Nostradamus. But first, a history lesson. Michel de Nostradamus, Latinized as Nostradamus, was an astrologer and supposed prophet whose predictions earned him fame long after the end of his life. His name is practically synonymous with prophecy, with many claiming that a series of poetic quatrains predicted future events. Once an apothecary, Nostradamus was expelled from the university he attended to study medicine. However, he came to assist numerous doctors throughout France during an outbreak of the bubonic plague, becoming a frontline reporter to the disease that was ravaging Europe. His own wife and 2 children had been lost to the heinous malady, possibly driving the devastated Nostradamus to his apocalyptic soothsaying later on. In 1555, his collection of quatrains to prophecies were published. Nostradamus obscured the meaning of his prophecies by using a mix of French, Greek, Italian, Latin, and Provençal. Many so-called accurate predictions are open for interpretation, especially given convenient translations on the part of those wanting the prophecies to be true. What you have to understand is, Nostradamus was the voice of his time, a time of great turmoil where the prediction that things would get worse was often a pretty obvious one. People feel reassured when somebody tells them things that make them feel prepared for danger, and people especially enjoy finding patterns that let them in on secret knowledge. This also might account for laughably ridiculous phenomenon like the QAnon movement. Human beings' brains are hardwired to find patterns, especially patterns that appear to empower them and support their biases. What does this have to do with the anime I'm reviewing? Not all that much. But I wanted to talk about something interesting before I had to talk about something dull. So dull. Once again, we return to the world of Lupin III, our favorite lascivious looter. As usual, he's supported by Daisuke Jigen, expert marksman and heterosexual life partner. Goemon Ishikawa XIII, once an enemy of Lupin, who can cut pretty much anything with his swords and tetsuken, and Fujiko Mine, seductress and often traitor of the rest of the gang. And chasing the thieves is Inspector Zenigata of the ICPO, a dogged but unlucky law enforcer. The Lupin gang are often caught up in big adventures, heists, and treasure hunts, taking them around the globe. I've already covered quite a few Lupin III features here on Otaku Evolution, including the first 3 Lupin movies, Mystery, or Secret, Amamo, Castle of Cagliostro, and Legend of the Gold of Babylon. All 3 bring something to the table in their own way, though the first 2 are of a higher quality than the third. The thing is, while Legend of the Gold of Babylon might not have been a great Lupin movie, it was a fascinating Lupin movie, full of quirks and trademark style of its own. Well, in the 3rd TV series. Farewell to Nostradamus? Well, it also has its own little charms, but they're mired in an overall sense of lifelessness that makes it a chore to watch. Seriously, it barely has any identity. It's just a Lupin III movie.
My name is Lupin III, and we came here to rob your vault.
You'll never get inside the vault, so just forget about it.
I see a different future, and I've got a better track record than Nostradamus.
Huh? Lupin.
In Brazil, Lupin and Jigen have stolen a diamond and hidden it in a doll. After being chased by Zenigata, they board a flight out. A little girl named Julia spots Lupin with the doll and takes it for herself, not knowing what's in it. It turns out that Julia is the daughter of a U.S. presidential candidate and business magnate Douglas, and is being looked after by Fujiko. However, she's kidnapped by unknown assailants. Douglas refuses to give in to the kidnappers' demands. Meanwhile, Fujiko contracts Lupin and Jigen to steal a treasure from atop the enormous skyscraper Douglas owns, the Earth Building. The treasure is the supposed lost book of prophecies of Nostradamus, a book that a cult claims to already have. Naturally, the cult are the ones who kidnapped Julia in a bid to retrieve the book from the vault atop the building. So Lupin has to contend with the Nostradamus sect, Douglas's vault's defenses, and of course Zenigata as he attempts to steal the book.
the side of your helmet. Hi!
The movie has most of the usual Lupin III feature tropes. There's a treasure to be pilfered, there's the badass henchman of the main bad guy, there's a bit where Lupin is presumed to be dead, there are several chases, and there's some kind of historical angle to the treasure. The only real exception is that there's no feature-independent Lupin lady, or Phil, unless you count Julia, and that would be weird. She's more like Michael in Bye Bye Lady Liberty. Bratty half-pint the viewer just kind of has to endure. If anyone's the Lupin lady of the movie, it's Fujiko, who spends some time with amnesia, which is reused in the dreadful Columbus files. That's one of the bright points of the movie, that it makes use of Fujiko outside of just being the thorn in the plans of Lupin and the gang.
I never met a woman who made getting stabbed in the back so much fun.
I'm sorry, I just don't understand those sort of things.
So what do you think, Fujiko? Have I started to jog your memory yet?
But outside of Fujiko and one other thing I'll get to later, this movie has little else going for it. It's one of the most paint-by-numbers Lupin III features I've ever seen, and it virtually sleepwalks through its hour-and-a-half runtime. There's really nothing to chew on here. Lupin is contracted to get a treasure for Fujiko, goes through a lot of uninteresting trouble getting the key to the treasure, defeats the bad guy, treasure hunt is ultimately mostly fruitless, but Lupin makes a new friend in Julia. Oh, did I spoil it for you? Trust me, I didn't, because it's like any number of Lupin III adventures except extra listless. The villains are one-note and boring, Jigen, Goemon, and Zenigata are just blown by the winds of the narrative without actually participating, and Lupin lacks a certain dangerous edge that makes him so interesting a character in the best entries. And the plot is just so mundane and never subverts expectations. You can predict every beat as you watch. All throughout I kept saying to myself, yep, I've seen this before. And while literally true, it was also figuratively true, because you could easily replace the story with the story of any number of TV specials. But this is supposed to have been a theatrical Lupin film, so I have higher expectations for it.
Within this book of prophecy, I hold the key to your salvation!
Oh, Master, please save me! Save us all!
Master, tell us what to do!
There's also very little character chemistry. The Lupin gang appears to be disinterested and muted throughout the runtime, like they have somewhere better to be, which makes the viewer also feel that way. I have no interest in whether Lupin and the gang get the lost book of Nostradamus, or if Julia is rescued, or if Sergio gets a new boat. It's all just so boring. Where's the sexy, edgy tension? Where's the hard-boiled grit and joie de vivre? If I paid $10 to see this in the theater, I'd have felt ripped off. Like I said in my review of the Columbus Files, if you're gonna give Fujiko, or any other major character, amnesia, make it a big part of the story. Bring in memories of previous adventures and experiences the character has had that fills them out in an attempt to restore them. Don't make it some throwaway plot point that gets resolved quickly and then never brought up again. Amnesia is a big fucking deal. The Steven Universe movie handled it better than this. Way better. If you're gonna use Nostradamus and his prophecies, don't bullshit some made-up ones for the cult to fulfill. Use the actual quatrains and the history of Nostradamus better. At least talk about the plague aspect of his life, or discuss the phenomenon of prophecy itself, maybe to debunk it. It's like they just threw in Nostradamus without any attention to what made him an interesting historical figure. They just spun a wheel of historical figures, and it stopped on Nostradamus. And there's this miniature city inside an enormous skyscraper, and very little of the movie takes place in it, despite all the cool things you could do with that setting. The entire movie could have taken place in that complex. Like Lupin's uncle could be kept in a facility in the Earth building to ensure nobody who knew how to break into the safe could leave. It would be a bit of a plot convenience, but I'm not putting it past Douglas to keep prisoners. The cult could have been an outgrowth of former Douglas supporters that splintered off when they became obsessed with the Nostradamus book and have been hiding within the complex. And Chris could be a traitorous security chief secretly on their side. These are just ideas, not how I expected the movie to be. I expected the movie to be interesting, but it wasn't.
What do you think you're doing? Lupin, are you insane? No one has ever escaped from Execution Island alive.
I believe that the secret to enjoying life comes from doing as many foolish things as possible.
You want to know what I like in this feature? You want to know what's actually good in this, aside from Fujiko being the featured female lead? 2 scenes. One is the scene where Lupin and Jigen attempt to break into Douglas's vault. A scene that goes on for about 3 minutes, but is classic Lupin III. The 2 thieves find themselves on the 200th floor of the Earth building, but have fallen, pun intended, for a trap, which takes them over the edge, struggling with a net in a whirlpool, and scrambling up the way they came to safety. And just when they think they've beaten the obstacles, they have to deal with some sort of wind power blades. It's always fun seeing Lupin do physical stunts to get the loot he seeks, and his reactions to the situation are priceless. The second is Lupin's escape from the collapsing Earth building with Julia, taking them over and being chased by a rushing current as they descend, snowboarding down the skiing area, and ultimately underwater. All the while the enormous super building is coming down all around them, probably killing hundreds of people. It's a short bit, probably unnecessary in the long run, but I actually wouldn't have minded if it were longer, because it's one of the sole rays of sunshine peeking through the dull gray sky that is this movie. But a couple of good scenes do not a good movie make, and Farewell to Nostradamus is overall a very dull film. What makes a good Lupin feature? Well, first of all, a good Lupin feature is moody, with a little bombast, but not overtly cheesy. A good Lupin feature balances the characters, giving most, if not all of them, something to do. A good Lupin feature has a sense of danger and intrigue, and a good Lupin feature might have low-key and emotional content, but isn't too sentimental, is romantic but without being corny. A good Lupin feature is not boring. Farewell to Nostradamus fails because it's predictable, safe, and inert. I kept waiting for some big injection of attitude and intensity, but all I got was an insipid mess full of pap. Half the characters ultimately didn't matter. They couldn't make the prison island portion even the slightest bit interesting despite all the potential, and it never made as much use of the Earth building as it could have. Besides which, it was just plain empty. A pointless 98 minutes that added zero substance or flavor to the overall franchise. Totally forgettable.
That's Lupin. He's alive. Lupin! You're under arrest! Oh, hey, Pops. Glad you could make it. Wouldn't be a party without you. Save me a dance now.
I don't know, people. I don't think I can keep handling these lesser Lupin entries. I try to alternate between those and actual good ones, but the dull ones just take so much out of me that it almost makes me want to quit talking about Lupin completely, which is a shame because I love the franchise dearly. What I have to review next isn't a whole lot better either. I just know it's going to cause me all kinds of frustration. But join me next time when I take a look at Iria, Seiram the Animation. Until then, see ya!
Fujiko?
That mean man is following me. I think he's a pedophile.
No! I just want to get my dolly back.